Hey, it's David here from Freedom Founders. A lot of people have been pinging me in the last few days asking me, so David, what now? Now that the election is over? Well, we think it's over. There's still the legal dispute, verification of the final tabulation of the count. That's going to take weeks, maybe a couple months, but still the country has to move forward. And the markets themselves are going to take a stance based on the election results. Now, in the near term, I don't think we see any big jolts one way or the other. Both administrations, whether it would be Trump or Biden, are still in the mode of spending money. There's been no abatement from either side to look at the deficit spending, especially with coronavirus that inflicted our country earlier this year. The amount of federal stimulus, unprecedented, will continue, but not at the same level, of course. And I believe, being in a Biden administration, that the majority Senate Republican held is going to push back against the Biden administration, just like the House pushed back against Trump. And so there's going to be gridlock, a lot of gridlock for the next 4 years. Yes, there'll be changes. Yes, in the economy. Yes, there'll be changes in regulatory bodies. That is always going to happen. But I think overall, the trend the next 4 years is going to be a lot of gridlock, which is not necessarily good for the economy, not good for the country, not good for the markets. If you were around in the 70s, or you read history books about the 70s, that was an era of what we called stagflation. Now, stagflation means that the economy itself was very stagnant. A lot of what we call economic malaise, really not a lot of movement. And that's really what some of the people that I follow in economics have been saying, even before the election, that even with a Trump presidency, where it seems like things were moving fast and furious forward, we don't know how that's going to do with a Biden administration. Yes, they'll keep spending money hand over fist, and that seems to keep the economy propped up, but they can't do that forever. So at some point, we have to deal with the after effects of the coronavirus, which we're not even through with that yet either. We're seeing an uptick, an upsurge in virus cases across the globe. In this country, Europe's even shutting things down again. Will a Biden administration do that to some extent? We'll have to see. But that could certainly have more effects on the economy as a whole. So stagflation, stagnant economy, but the inflation, we may not see that for the next year, 2 years, but I believe certainly by the middle of this decade and through the end of the decade and beyond, we could seriously see some considerable amount of inflation, maybe back to a hyperinflation, 5, 6, 7, 8%. Look, the country, the government, the officials can only do so much with the debt and deficit spending. At some point, the only way out is to what we call monetize the debt. That's inflation. That's where you need to have your future tied to some kind of assets that will ride with inflation. Now, one is certainly a business or businesses. You're in a business, you're going to be in a business for a number of years. That's one asset that will keep up to some degree with inflation, notwithstanding what the model is, what industry you're in, what regulations and compliance you have to deal with. But still, a business typically keeps up to some extent with inflation. On the more passive side would be tangible assets, real estate, which is what we favor in Freedom Founders, is being tied to some assets that will ride that inflation curve. Because with the devaluing of the dollar, your money will only buy so much in future years. And once you are no longer producing active income, then you are going to face that very likely possibility of running low on funds down the road after you, quote, retire. So keep that in mind as well. I believe keeping your overhead, both your lifestyle and your business overhead, as low and tight as possible. This is probably not a good time to be doing massive expansion unless you have a specific known model or opportunity. Now, if you do and you want to use the low interest rate debt today, great opportunity, but just don't be cavalier about it, is my point. Be careful, keep some dry powder. Cash flow margins are important to have going forward in the next several years. There will be a lot more volatility in the decade ahead. I think that would have been with either administration. I'm not picking a side here. I'm just saying that the bull run, uptick economy that we had from about 2012, coming out of the great financial recession in 2008, from 2012 to 2020, when the coronavirus hit, we had this bull run market under two different administrations. A lot of deficit spending to make that happen, though, and I feel like that's something that's going to have to slow down, and that can't keep going. The Federal Reserve can't keep saving the day, so that's why we're going to run into some economic malaise, and I believe more volatility. More volatility means you can't stay with the same models that got you to where you are today. You have got to really be looking at alternative ways to build your future, to be the architect of your future. Not a time to rely on the old models, the old financial models, the old traditional retirement models. If ever there was a time to get off the fence and start figuring out a game plan that doesn't follow the majority rule, now would be that time. Don't wait any longer if you haven't done something to this point. This is the time to get your house in order and figure out really how you can position yourself for the opportunities ahead. Because in every economic cycle, whether it is chaos and disruption and uncertainty, there are tons of opportunities, but you've got to know how to take advantage of those. Which ones are right for you? How to position yourself for those opportunities. That's what I would say to you going forward from here. Now, I'll have some future blogs or more on the economy and where we are with real estate and business, but this is my forecast for now. Big picture, just be aware that only you can deal with your economy. You can't control the outside economy. You can't control the election, but you can control your own economy, but you've got to do things differently. Remember, always stay focused on your freedom, and I'll talk to you soon.